Welcome to the MHP CashFlow Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of mobile home park investing, real estate strategies, and building long-term passive income. Hosted by Garrett, Terrell, real estate investor, mobile home park operator, and founder of Rocket Capital Fund.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the MHP CashFlow Podcast. I am your host, Garrett Terrell, and today we have a special guest on the podcast in Mr. Tim Woodbridge. Tim currently owns 13 different mobile home parks, totaling 430 units. Very impressive portfolio. I'm excited to talk with him today. Tim, thanks for coming on.
Garrett, thanks for having me, man. I look forward to talking and love what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So let's start from the beginning, right? So you were previously an RN and decided that was not the career you wanted to be in, and you wanted to be in real estate investing, right? So how did you get started in the MHP industry? How did you buy your first park? Tell me about that deal.
Sure. Well, I was still a nurse for 2 years after I bought my first park. So there wasn't I'm done with this job, I'm going to go into real estate. It was more like, I heard about real estate because I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and like asset liabilities, new terms to me at the time. And, I read more, I listened to podcasts, I eventually heard Frank Rolfe on the Bigger Pockets podcast, and I was like, yeah, that sounds cool, I like that. It's a little different, and I don't know, it interested me, and from there, I found one on mobilehomeparkstore.com, barely closed it, such ups and downs with closing it. It was a small park and in a rural area, and we got it done, but that just, started my interest in continuing. So I closed the park, and it took me a couple years. I closed the second, a third the year after. But for a lot of that time, I was like, okay, I like mobile home parks, but also I like RV, and also I like apartments and blah, 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 right? The grass is greener on the other side to me. And finally, I got the RV, I got the apartment, and I realized, there's problems with everything. Everything has issues. So what issues do I really, really like? And so, I stuck with MHP.
That's awesome. Yeah, so you kind of ventured into a few different other asset classes after you purchased your first park, right? And then you realized you loved MHP. So how did that happen, right? What did you see in other asset classes that you didn't like versus what you did like in MHPs?
So with apartments, there's a lot of moving pieces. And, there's tenants in and out. And I don't like that as much. And the same with RV parks. So if you're a master marketer, you'll make a killing at either. Or, get the right people in place. I think probably there's a bit of control freak in me. That's I don't really want a third-party management company. But at the same time, being small and starting off with apartments, I had to rely on that, or, that's just, there's no way around it. Whereas with mobile home parks, I started small and built the in-house management company around it as need came up. And there's more, it's not, I don't want to say control as much as I'm informed more of everything. And I, it works out better. There's been 2 instances that I've used third-party management for MHP, and it doesn't work as well, man.
Yeah, for sure. I've heard the same things about the RV space. It's more of a want versus a need. Because with mobile homes, these people are there 12 months out of the year. With RVs, they could be there for 3 months, gone for 4, back for a couple more. I personally don't love that variability at all. I think it messes with your financials. It messes with the debt service. It seems like more risk to me. But what I found with MHPs is that these debt service, these pay the debt, and they pay it well, and they have a good track record and history of paying it. I mean, I heard this stat a while ago, and I'm sure you've heard of it as well. The MHP asset class is the lowest defaulting rate commercial asset class in the last 50 years, which I think is pretty incredible. It just shows how consistent and how steady cash flow these MHPs are. So I love it. Love that. So next question. How many states are you in right now?
4.
4. Okay. And I know you're in Alabama, right?
No, we didn't.
What are the other
close
3?
The Alabama deal. The Alabama deal.
You're not in Alabama.
Came up. Not in Alabama yet, but we will be. Same with, so I'm in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Oklahoma. We're about to be closing on a Virginia 2-park portfolio. And someone just reached out about a Alabama deal this morning, actually. So, when deals don't close sometimes, and that's the nature of the beast, but stuff comes around. I will go into Alabama. It seems like a very, depending on where you are in Alabama, very strong area.
Yeah, for sure. We've seen a lot of good success with Alabama, and that's kind of like our main state that we look to buy in. So I'm sure you'll find a good deal there in Alabama eventually, but those other states are awesome. So is it just you yourself purchasing these deals, or do you have any partners, or what does that look like?
So for the last 4 years, it's been all like JV stuff and, our own capital or like creative or like whatever. This year we started doing syndications and accepting investor capital. So right now, the team is myself, my partner Matthias, who is like the best operator and numbers person. And so our partners, Marianne and Vinny, husband and wife, that's investor relations and due diligence. And we're working with our loan broker, Kayam, who is finding us the loans, of course, and also doing a lot of due diligence. So, we just interviewed a ton of people and like hired, right? So like work for equity sort of thing, acquisition team. So it's like Matthias and I are kind of replicating what we're doing to really ramp up the acquisitions. And like, we love it, but obviously we're the bottleneck if it's just us. So we got 8 more people who are working acquisitions, and, it's all like syndicated stuff. So, everyone's kind of getting equity based on the work that they're doing. The next step will be, get a fund going and really ramp up investor relations. I was just talking with my friend Jim Elder, and he was kind of explaining a little bit about how Open Door Capital does. So Jim, for anyone who doesn't know, is like the lead infill guy for Open Door Capital. And, just trying to okay, what's the next step? What's going to be the best bang for our buck in terms of adding people to the team? So excited about it, though.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you're building like an actual syndication structure company, like with roles and response. You're not really doing, you might have started out doing JVs, but you're kind of transitioning out of JVs into syndications. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, the more I do, the more I learn from others and the more sophisticated we become. And it's just like, okay, this is, these individual syndication deals are working really well, and how can we do this a little bit better? So that'll be, in 6 months or so, opening a fund.
Yeah, that's awesome. So another question with the syndications is, for some of these smaller deals, maybe they're less than 30 units or yet less than 40 units or whatever it is. How are you guys able to justify all the syndication and attorney costs on such a small deal versus like, paying 25 grand on a, $600,000-$700,000 deal versus a $5 million deal, where it's a little bit easier to kind of stomach a fee like that. How are you guys able to work around that?
That's a great question, bro. No one's asked that, but it's so good. So we stopped doing anything less than $2.5 million because it doesn't make sense, So we like the syndication because like it pays us, acquisition fee, asset management fee, stuff like that. Whereas like JV, that smaller deals, you're not consistently paying yourself. I mean, you're paying yourself maybe on cash flow, but I mean, I've been in this game long enough to know that that's not a reliable source. So it's like with syndications, we can write in to pay ourselves while still getting these great investor returns. So yeah, I mean, it wouldn't make sense for like a smaller deal because it is, we're paying $12,500 to $15,000 or so for syndication, and it's it gets to the point where it's too thin.
Yeah, it gets very expensive. People don't understand that, and that's why I like the JV structure just now for where I'm at in my career. I might get into more so of a proper syndication in the future, but right now it's just a bunch of JVs, and it's fine. It's not, it's not broken, so we don't need to fix it right now. If we get into the future where we have some problems, we'll open up a fund or a syndication and kind of go from there. But that's good. I mean, not too many people know about the costs like that. Only operators do,
Yeah.
So that's that's funny. Awesome, man. So you guys are doing bigger deals now.
Yeah. But I just want to speak to what you're doing. Like, I love how you're like, man, this is what I'm doing. This is working amazingly for me. I had I'm part of the deal room, which is like traditional multifamily. And I was leading a sprint, and it's, an accountability group basically. And there was someone who was bringing up, like, I was like, okay, what are your KPIs? And he's like, man, I don't have KPIs. And I was like, he's like, I'm just talking to a lot of brokers. I don't know. Like, and I'm like, okay, if it's working, then like, don't let anyone tell you you have to do it one way. There is no one way. You make your own way. And like, if it's working for you, because they were the same. They're like besides this like really, really big deal they're working on, they have like all these smaller like JVs. And they're like, we figured that if we're making about the same amount of money on these giant deals versus the smaller deals, so like, why? I'm like, that is the question you should be asking. Why? Don't just follow people, man. Like, figure out what works for you and what doesn't.
100%. Yeah. And I hate when people say it has to be a certain cookie cutter way of doing things, because even like in baseball, like I played college baseball, we would always get instructions and coaches saying, oh no, you got to do it this way or you got to do it that way. If you can hit the ball and you can make good contact and get on base, like anything you do in the box is up to you. Just stay within yourself and don't worry about changing your stance or changing all of this stuff. Like, just do what works for you. And it's so true in business too, because I see a lot of people that are trying to follow certain cookie cutter ways of doing things, and they can get in trouble by doing it that way versus staying within themselves, knowing how to produce revenue, knowing how to produce deals and source deals. It's a thing that not a lot of people talk about. It's probably the proper way of doing things, but when it really comes down to it, like, you have to be confident in your own ability and your own way of doing things. Now, can you fine tune that? Of course you can. You can definitely fine tune it. But, to follow the narrative, just because a guy on a podcast says it or on a YouTube video says it, just doesn't really make any sense in my brain. What do you think about that?
Yeah, 100%. So like, like to finish, we were talking in the sprint, and I was like, if it works for you, great. And if it doesn't work for you at one point, then you can, figure out what does work. But I think, what's Alex Hermosi was saying, something like there's more, there's three things, and it was like there's more, there's better, and there's different. And he's like, keep doing more until it doesn't work, then do different. And then when different doesn't work, you kind of go back and forth. And he's like, you don't really need change, So just keep doing it until it stops working. Do a little bit different, but you don't need to burn everything down. It's just okay, like this guy, oh, I don't do KPIs, it doesn't work for me. It's like, okay, well, if you get to the point where what you're doing isn't working, then maybe try KPIs. Try what's working for the next guy in your same field. So I didn't do shit for KPIs for a long time. I didn't track anything like that, and it worked until it didn't work as effectively. And I slowly learned, okay, if I track what I'm doing, then I'm a lot more effective. But asking me to do that 3, 4, 5 years ago, I would have been like, what? That doesn't even make sense to me. That's the next level for me,
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of people who've been doing this for a few years who talk to people just starting out, and it's like, you got to do this, you got to do this. It's like, no, bro, you're talking to think of talking to yourself 5 years ago. Don't think of talking to yourself today, because today it makes sense to you.
Yeah.
But talking to yourself 5 years ago, I would have been like, bro, I'm a nurse. I just kind of want to get into this real estate thing to get wealthy. I don't 100% know why. I don't know why mobile home parks.
Yeah.
I have an idea, but over explaining, that wouldn't have done shit for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, if it's working for you, don't change it. Don't fix it. I mean, even in the fix and flip space, that's kind of how I got started in real estate. I did that a lot in Washington before we moved here to Arizona. Did a ton of fix and flip, single family fix and flip, and did very well. There's another local flipper in town that was always asking, and he was doing a bunch of deals too. And he had hooked up with a probate attorney, and this probate attorney was sending him deals constantly, these probate deals. And he was doing very good in fix and flip, making a lot of money. And he kept asking me, he's like, hey man, how do you source your deals? How do you, and I had 4 or 5 different funnels, referrals, Facebook, Google, the basic. And I'm like, dude, don't change what you're doing. You're making a killing on every one of these flips every 3 months. You have an ace in the hole in your pocket. Just stick with that. Maybe get 1 or 2 more probate attorneys, but don't go try to do Facebook ads just because I'm doing it. You're crushing it right now. Just stick with it, And so people always think the grass is greener on the other side, but it's usually green where you water it.
Dude, I love that.
So I love that, man.
Yeah, that's such a great quote. The grass is greener where you water it. When I quit nursing, I didn't have replacement income really. I had a little money saved up, and I was like, I need to figure this out. And so I quit, and then I was quickly afraid of not having that recurring revenue come in. And so I tried to do single-family wholesaling. And so I paid a ton of money for systems and for VAs and marketing and blah, blah, blah. Lost a ton of money because I was like, I need faster cash, and mobile home parks aren't doing that. When I would have been 100% better to be like, okay, I like mobile home parks. How can I get the faster cash through this? How can I get more consistent cash? And I mean, I don't regret so much that experience because it's growing pains and I learned a ton. But it is definitely speaks to what we were just talking about on water the grass is greener where you water it.
Yeah, and the thing for me too, what I've learned over the years is start with the goal of what you're trying to accomplish and then work backwards. Be very specific about your buy box. Because before, dude, in the last 5 years, I would buy anything that made sense. It didn't matter if it was a single family or a duplex or an industrial building or anything, like anything that penciled, anything that made sense, I would be like, yeah, I'll do it. Now that's not the case, because it's not like I'm trying to build cash flow, like what you're saying, recurring revenue. I think that's the golden ticket to any business. I think it solves a lot of problems. It solves a lot of problems inside the business too. Cash flow is the king. We all know that.
Yeah.
But I was trying to build that while I was buying these weird single family fix and flips, and I would be stuck with that for 6 months, dumping a bunch of cash into it. And then after a while, after like 2 or 3 years doing it, I'm like, I'm not even doing what I want to be doing. You know, I'm not even buying these deals according to what my goals are. Like, I got to change everything. And then so basically about 1.5 years, I cut off all single family purchases. Like, I will never buy a single family deal just because it's not in alignment with my goals right now.
Yeah.
So that's a huge piece that I learned. Yeah.
Nice, dude.
Yeah, it's extremely powerful, especially when you have to make a huge financial investment into something and you pass on a deal that you could have purchased that made a lot more money over the long term. You know, it's that short-term mindset versus the long-term mindset. Because when I was younger, all I wanted to do was just get the short-term cash, the short-term checks, the fix and flip. Oh yeah, this is going to be fine. Well, if I would have started buying mobile home parks 5 years ago, I'd be in a lot different place. But I was too dumb just buying single family deals. And now I wish I could go back in time and do that, because I probably would have bought a lot more cheaper price deals.
It's not dumb though. You got to give yourself some grace, right? It's all like living and experience, and without going through that, you wouldn't be where you are today, sort of thing. So like I had to lose money in single family wholesaling in order for me to be like, oh shit, like this is what I want to do. You know, this is what I like to do, and so why don't I make money off of what I like to do?
So you made it back in the MHP space, right? So you bought deals 4 years ago. So what was the price per pad? What were, some of the cap rates back then compared to now? Because I've heard from a ton of different operators that the industry now is completely different than what it was 4, 5, 6 years ago. So what was your experience with that?
So first of all, I was very, very ignorant. I'm kind of a let's do the thing kind of person and like figure it out as we go. That's why like partnering with Matthias is amazing, because he's very, very thorough, very diligent on things. And so we balance each other out really well. But like I wasn't even thinking price per pad or cap rates or anything for a few years. I mean, I got the general gist, but it wasn't making sense to me. And I was like making offers that were getting rejected all the time, because it was, I thought I was doing things wrong, but it was a frothy market. There was people buying things for, for better or for worse, they were paying more than I could. And I, again, felt like I was doing something wrong, but then, the market changed when interest rates went up. And I was like, oh, okay, it's more like all these people had access to really cheap debt. And I mean, sure, there's a ton of people who are getting burned by that now, because, their mortgage is coming up and they got to renew and blah, blah, blah. It sucks. It sucks for a lot of people. So, I mean, in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't buy any of those deals in the same way that they did. But yeah, I mean, I remember talking to brokers and they're like, dude, if you're not like hard money day one, then get out of here. And I was like, I'm not comfortable with that. So I did a lot of getting really good at what I was doing, running my first park, then my second, then my third, and really focusing on those. So it worked out. It worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of people were overpaying for deals back then. Even in the single family space, they were overpaying for it. So it seems like that it kind of followed suit in the MHP space. I mean, what was debt like that? Like back then? I mean, was it 4.5%, 5% interest, or was it higher in the MHP space? What was that like?
So I was hearing, right? I wasn't actually closing, but I was the things we closed had no debt and or were seller financed, because that's the only thing we could get to close. I mean, I heard fours, and it's like, yeah, of course I'll buy it 4.5 cap rate or whatever, because look how cheap debt is or whatever. Again, like I would imagine agency debt was even better. So, I mean, overpaying is a super relative term in terms of like maybe they overpaid, but like maybe that overpay got the deal done and allowed them to execute their business plan in 5 years. Like, if we were buying at that time, all of our business plans are 5 years. And I mean, that can change at the end of 5 years if everyone kind of loves it and wants to refi, continue to cash flow. But we don't underwrite anything like that. We're straight 5 years cash flow for every quarter, and then get a big exit and double your money over the 5 years. So I mean, we could have done well. Kind of, though. I mean, we would have probably tried to exit and not got the price that we could, because as interest rates went up, of course, cap rates went up too. So, I don't know, dude. It's an interesting thing to kind of witness.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Hopefully the debt comes down in the future a little bit more than what it is right now. I think we can make a lot more deals pencil.
I love it because no one else is coming in. Everyone's like afraid. I love that.
It does give us more leverage for seller finance deals, when there's 8% debt or 8.5%. Tons of leverage.
Yeah. Well, I love it because I'm like, all LOIs that we send out, it has 3 offers. It has all cash at close, like syndicated all cash at close. It has a seller equity piece where they're carrying something back. And then it has like a seller finance piece. And again, like all of our deals, minimum 2x equity multiple for investors. So I'm like, this is where I can be to get to this. Like, I want to give everyone their full price. Right out the gate, I want to give everyone their full price. The math shows that I can only pay this because here's where interest rates are. And so where everyone's sitting on the sidelines, I'm like, good, stay out of my way. Let me come in and like make some deals. Like I don't find deals, I make deals. So I feel like maybe, a little bit of Sam Zell, what was it, the grave dancer or whatever. Obviously not with business, but in a similar way with high interest rates.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. You're not finding deals, but you're making them. I really like that because you really can make anything a deal. Now, should you buy anything? Not necessarily, but you can pretty much make anything a deal with the right terms, So, oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. If there's a deal you like, an asset you like, in a place that you like, there is either a price or a financing strategy that'll make it work. So you can do your business plan, make some money, and make your investors money. So yeah, I mean, don't just go 100%. Buy shit just to buy shit, but
yeah. Exactly. So next question. This is kind of a common debate in the MHP space, but are you a tenant-owned home guy? Do you like park-owned homes? Do you like a mix? What's your thoughts and opinions on that?
So generally, I say we own park-owned homes out of necessity, and then we try and rent to own and or lease with an option and or whatever to tenants. There's a lot of people who are spending a lot of money on park-owned homes, and they don't realize it. They see, oh my gosh, I'm making a killing off of this, but they don't step back to be like, oh shit, like 70% of that park-owned home income is going right back to expenses to keep that park-owned home fixed up. So generally, we're not crazy about it. But like, I'm not going to turn away from all park-owned home park because, we can get in there and do our business plan and make it work. So.
Yeah, 100%. And really, from what I've seen so far, the real big equity plays that you can make on some of these deals is by converting the park-owned homes to tenant-owned homes, right? To get the lot rents to service the debt, but also with the balances. I don't know if you guys do this, but with the balances, it's kind of like extra cash flow until you get to year 2, 3, or 4, and then you refi to cheaper debt. All the while, the lot rent is increasing over the course of 2 to 4 years. And so it's almost like a delayed gratification play a little bit. Is that what you guys are doing?
So it's delayed gratification and not delayed, right? So it's both. It's you keep the cash flow, and we like to do longer terms, so 5 years, 10 years sometimes. And then so like it's less of a drop off when we get there and they get it all paid off. And like, you're increasing the value of your asset by increasing that lot rent and, kind of resetting that. And then, you still get cash flow because people are still paying those prices, that park-owned home amount will be the same throughout the term, but like you're still creeping up with that lot rent. And as long as you're not like trying to go crazy, you're not going over market, you're not screwing people over, like usually it's a pretty darn good cash flow play.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And, if you're looking at a park-owned home deal, and I just saw one the other day, but if you're looking at a park-owned home deal, and the rents are, let's say just for easy numbers, $800. Are you looking at that deal and saying, okay, we can do $400, like we can go to the tenant and say, look, we'll do a $400 lot rent, keeping your rent exactly the same, and then a $400 home rent on top of that. Is that kind of how you're structuring it? Or are you looking at like the market and doing a balance with principal and interest on the RTO? How are you guys doing that?
So we generally go up to market. We don't want to go above market because then it gets tricky. I've seen people like, they'll have 100 park-owned homes and they're like, lot rent's $800, and I'm like, bro, this is small town North Carolina. No, it's not.
Yeah.
But and then like we don't go super overcomplicated on like rent to owns because they're all leased with an option, So it's like you're gonna lease this for this long, this price for this amount of time. Here's your option payment. If we even do a true option payment, sometimes it's like $1 option payment, depending. If like we took over a park and that's where they're at, I'm not going to be like, give me $2,000 to buy this home. It's like, no. Like you've been here for 4 years. If you want to buy the home, give me $1 as an option payment because legally it has to be that. And then let's just give this to you. And then you take care of your home. Hopefully you get a little pride of ownership and you figure out that it's really easy to fix a toilet plunger or a flapper in the back of a toilet versus me calling a stupid plumber out. No offense to plumbers. Plumbers are amazing, but dang, it costs a lot to call a plumber out to fix to fix one of those, and it's so easy. It's a $5 part. So, you kind of elevate tenants to have more responsibility, and to me, that is a win.
Yeah. Yeah. And this might be not a common idea, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this. So I've probably underwritten and actually gone on site to probably 20 parks in the last 12 months. Like I actually visited on site and purchased a few of them, but actually gone on site to about 20. And just with me being green into the industry, I've only been in for 12 months. I wish I started much sooner, but only 12 months. I've seen a lot of tenant-owned home communities that look like absolute crap. And I've seen a lot of park-owned home communities that look great, that are like top-notch. So has that been your experience? And how do you make your tenant-owned home communities look really good versus carrying the higher expenses with the park-owned home communities? How do you guys do that?
I lower expectations sometimes. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true. Like, you know, the more I do this, the more I am changing, like, depending on what seems good. Because, like, so the idea of all tenant-owned homes and, like, you know, lower expense ratios and easier to run, and it is a sexier asset to, like, big players. The idea is good. In theory, it's good. In practice, what I've seen, and it might just because I'm not big enough yet, right? But I've seen that I've had to lower my expectations on tenant homes. Unless it's like, you know, some kind of insurance risk and whatnot, then we have to step in. But otherwise, I mean, I've seen numbers spray painted on the sides of homes for like, this is my lot number. And I'm like, what am I going to do about that? So I don't have a good answer yet, man, but I'm always looking for good answers to it.
Yeah. It's that was one of the things that I immediately noticed. You know, everybody told me, oh, you have to only look at tenant owned. You know, it's hard to get debt for park owned home parks, which I have found that not to be true. I found a lot of lenders that can do park-owned home parks, that are happy to do park-owned home parks, and that love the debt service and want to keep it on their books. So it's like, I was told this narrative kind of from the start. Hashtag Vanderbilt. They're great. Yeah. I'm actually doing a refinance with them right now.
I'm closing the park with them right now.
You know,
I've done 3 other transactions with them. They're great. Love to work with them.
They're very great. Yeah, and it's like, you know, I've heard the whole thing of, you know, and I'm not trying to be a park-owned home advocate. I'm just trying to fully understand why people think like this, because, you know, they say, oh, you're going to get much better debt with a tenant-owned home community. In my opinion, I haven't really seen that either. I've seen a ton of term sheets for park-owned home communities and tenant-owned home communities. The difference is maybe 50 basis points. Maybe 75 at best, but the difference is on the debt service. The difference between $400 in lot rent versus $800 in park-owned home rent, that's a huge difference. So I know there's ways around it. There's reasons why you want to sell those homes off to the tenants to lower that expense ratio, but really when you kind of do the math on it, it's like, okay, I'm selling these or converting them to tenant-owned home to do what exactly? Because when you actually run some of the numbers on these parks, it's like, I might as well just keep them as park-owned because it services the debt and it allows me to pay my investors. You know, what do you think about that?
So, everyone says all tenant-owned homes, but that's so true. I the same with the debt service. Maybe a half point, you know, half percentage point, maybe 3/4 of a percentage point lower for all tenant owned. And like, I know that from firsthand experience. We closed the Oklahoma City Park 75 pads and 74 tenant owned homes, and then right before that we closed Spartanburg, which was with Vanderbilt, and you know, 100 sites and 59 park-owned homes. So Vanderbilt loves that. So, of course, we went with them. Yep. And, yeah, I mean, you know, maybe 3/4 of a point higher, maybe a full point. But I think it's only, if it is a full point, I'd say it's because rates started going down a little. Anyway, I mean, and it, you know, super healthy DSCR. So our Virginia deal, our DSCR is 1.7 at close because there's some tenant-owned homes, or sorry, there's some park-owned homes, and not majority park-owned homes, but like enough where like Vanderbilt's like, yes, I want this deal because look at this healthy DSCR. So it's 100% like dependent on your business plan, and our business plan with this, we will go in, we will sell off the homes, so it, you know, it looks good to whoever is buying it. But we'll do that, you know, 5 to 10 year to even longer. The current seller has like 15-year terms on his stuff. So your DSCR stays super high. You can get some good debt on it. and you're not like, we said at the beginning of this, more money just makes things easier.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think I'm going to do whatever we can to make it a really great asset for someone to buy.
Yeah, I agree. I think, there isn't one size fits all. There's no one correct way of doing things. There's no one correct way of running a park or doing it all park owned or tenant owned or whatever. I do think if you have the majority, 75% tenant owned, or maybe even a little more, but you have a good chunk of park owned homes there, maybe, 25, 30% to really boost that rent roll up. I like the control aspect of park owned homes. Obviously they have to be in good condition. They have to be well kept. I totally get all of that. And some people out there are probably not going to agree with me on that, but it's whatever. I like having control to some extent, right? Like if they're not paying, it's really hard to get a tenant-owned home tenant out of there because they own their own home. It's just a mess. I've heard that from multiple different operators. But when you own the home, you can serve an eviction notice after 5 days in Alabama. So it's like there's risks to it, but there's also more rewards with the park owned homes. And if it's a manageable risk, I say do it, but I do understand the lowering of the expense ratio. I totally get that. It looks better to a lender, but park owned homes get so much hate. I want to be a slight advocate for park owned homes because I also know a few other operators that only do park owned homes and they make a crap ton of money. Yeah. And guys that have been in the industry 10, 20 years that only do park owned homes. And so it's interesting to see the discrepancy between tenant owned and park owned. It's like red versus blue, it's like Trump versus Kamala,
Yeah. It's they pick
it's
a
such
side,
a battle.
They plant their flag in the ground and it's like this or bust. And it's like, well, I don't know about this or bust. I know about like this might work for you, but like this other way might work for this other guy. And, whatever's working, like do that.
100%. So this is obviously the MHP CashFlow podcast. I love talking about cash flow. I think it's, I think you can make a ton of equity in some of these MHP deals, but I think all of us secretly are really pushing towards the cash flow. Like that's the thing. That's why we get into the industry, I feel like, because with equity plays, you can do that in multifamily. You can do that in fix and flip and make a lot of money with a lot less headache. I think a lot of people in the MHP space get into it for the cash flow. So talk to me about your best cash flowing deal. One that you're like, wow, this is a life-changing deal. Like, talk to me about that deal.
So in terms of cash flow, there's not like one deal that I'm like, oh my gosh, every month I'm making a killing. There's a little bit made from every deal in different ways. So the way I get paid, and like I gotta throw praise on my partner Matthias. I told him, I knew how to build wealth in mobile home parks. You helped me consistently cash flow in mobile home parks. So we get paid. It used to just be on exits and with some like property management fees. And like at first I was taking nothing, right? So it was like a solid year and a half before I actually started taking a 5% management fee to pay myself for the work I'm doing. Now it looks like, so we still do the back end property management fee. We do 5% back end. A lot of that goes to paying our VAs, like our in-house management team. And then like 5% of gross to the local community manager. So I get a little bit from that, like what's left over after paying our people. And then, we get monthly asset management fees for the syndicated deals. And we're now taking acquisition fees. And I only started taking acquisition fees last year. And again, like it, in my head, I was like, this is a long-term play, until I realized it's really shitty trying to live off of equity when you have all this debt.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the big way that I'm doing it. So acquisition fee, asset management fee. And then, I mean, yes to excess cash flow, but I don't count on stuff like that. It's nice, but it's not consistent enough to be like, yes, this is what I'm making. So.
Yeah. Okay. So it changes every month is what you're saying, basically.
A little bit. And like some stuff is quarterly, so like cash flow. So we do NOI minus debt service, and then minus investor pref payment, and then, split that, the remaining cash flow there based on equity owned. So like stuff like that's quarterly.
Okay.
But yeah. I mean, it's definitely one of those things that it took me some time to like consistently get paid. And if I had to start over, I'd start working with someone who could help me do that. But now it's like, okay, yeah, I get a little bit from a lot of places, and a lot of places really adds up.
The drip. Yeah. A bunch of different drips, and then it ends up being a big bucket at the end of the month, essentially.
Yeah. I retired from nursing 2 years ago, and I just retired my fiance, who's a teacher from teaching. So like, June was her last month of teaching. So I'm not like freaking, balling with all this cash, but I'm doing well enough that I could do that, and we can live, modestly but comfortably.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome. Yeah. Thanks, I mean, the cars and the fancy clothes and the fancy watches and everything, all of that crap doesn't mean anything. Paying off all of your debt, living comfortably, living below your means, having enough cash flow. That's like the real goals. When I was younger, I was all about Grant Cardone. Like the more debt, the better, like debt, it'll pay itself off one day, And as I've gotten older, I've really leaned more towards Dave Ramsay because, there's an aspect of it to where, yes, you can make more money with more debt, but at what cost because of the stress? Like that's a factor that people don't realize is, okay, yes, you can potentially leverage more and make more money that way, but that is going to add another layer of stress, which if you think that stress is worth it for that extra little bit of money, go ahead and do it. But right now, I would like less stress, less cortisol, less payments. I'm not trying to make a ton of money right now. I'm trying to minimize what I currently have, take chips off the table, stuff like that. Are you more so debt, or are you kind of Dave Ramsay?
I'm not Grant Cardone debt, but I am, especially now I'm in a super growth phase of my career. So I'm like, I want all the debt I can take to leverage things as long as it makes sense. We are super conservative, so I'm not going to try and get like, okay, yeah, I know this bank won't be keen on that because it's only a 1.15 DSCR, but let me go to a different bank. No, if it's a 1.15 DSCR, I don't need to do the damn deal. Like, I don't like stressing. I'm a low and slow kind of person. I want to sleep well at night. With that being said, I'm not so much a Dave Ramsay person. I'm definitely a pay off all your bad debt kind of person. I did see a post with a friend of mine who's like, oh, I have all this excess capital. Should I pay off my house? And there's all these people who weren't as far along in their journey as him, and they're like, no, you should not. You should invest that. And he's like, all the people I know who are ahead of me have a paid off house. So it's like, I accept now that my thinking changes the more I live and the more I experience. And so hopefully in 5 years, I can look back at today, Tim, and be like, oh yeah, that was funny when I thought that, but now I think this other thing. So, I mean, there's value in both, you know, like definitely live in your means and live, I mean, if you want to live lavishly, then make a lot more money. If you want to stress. That's not for me at all. Even though I am putting a lot more stress on myself because I want to grow. And that's okay. I know it's not going to be forever. It's going to be like, this is a season for growth.
And I got to clarify too. I love good real estate debt. I hate dumb consumer debt. You know, that's a big thing that people don't understand. It's like, oh, this, you know, a car loan or a business line of credit or whatever it is. That is night and day difference than long-term fixed debt on an appreciating asset that can service the debt. Totally different night and day. And people lump those two together, and that's just not the case, you know? No. And yeah, you want to have less stress, you know? And I think that's a big factor into real estate investing is, you know, we want to have less stress, but like me and you, we're wanting to just grow and buy as much as we can. And it just adds more stress to the plate naturally. I know I have that problem. I say yes to more things than I probably should. How do you navigate around that? Like, how do you decide what to say yes to and what to say no to? Like deal qualifications.
I say no to most things, with the caveat of like, if it's something big and like fits into our plan, then it's like my first reaction is no, because I'm scared. And then I let like it sinks into my brain and I'm like, oh wait, this is where we want to go. So it's no to me having to do that, but like, who can help? Who can do this? Who can we get to asset manage something like that? Because that'll take up all of our time trying to infill something like that. So I am, you know, definitely, I'm not anywhere near perfect or as good as you know, every day is a little bit better. But, I mean, saying yes, it's like, what we're doing now with acquisitions, right? So it's all like putting a ton of LOIs out, but like at the numbers that work. So like if it's in a good area, you know, the underwriters have really vetted everything and it works, then okay, let's put a LOI out. Like I don't think there's a reason to not put a LOI out, even if it's vastly lower. Like, again, I go into every deal wanting to give everyone every price that they want, and I want everyone to get rich. The reality is that's we can't do that. So, like, I'm not trying to put an offer out because, like, if you get less, then I get more. Ha, ha, ha. That's not how I operate. That's not my jam. So it's like, okay, like, here's this LOI, and the more I put out like this, the more success we're going to have. So.
Yeah, that's huge. So what does your next 12 to 24 months look like? What do you guys got in the works right now? Purchases, refis? What are your guys' plans? What's on the horizon? What are you kind of looking at?
So goal is, so I'm at 15 million assets under management right now. Goal is to be at 105 by 2027. The overarching goal is to be in the top 50 mobile home park operators in the country by 2029. So I need like 6,400 lots. So I need to, 15x what I've got right now. So really just working with people, getting people on our team who like are excited about, you know, what they're doing, getting the right people in the right seats. And so that's where I know that there's going to be a lot of stress, but like, this is the meaningful stress that I want to do. It's not like, you know, oh, how are we going to make that debt payment? Because to hell with that. It's more like, oh, how are we going to, you know, get enough LOIs out to take enough deals down, and how are we going to be able to raise enough capital for this big, hairy, audacious goal? So that's really my next 24 months is like, let's build the hell out of this team so it's running really, really efficiently.
That's awesome. Is the plan to, build a huge portfolio, sell it to a REIT, and then go sip margaritas on the beach? What's the goal behind that?
I'm not really a margaritas on the beach kind of guy. So it's the why behind it is because I really, really love working with people, and I really love good systems that are running really well. And I love surrounding myself with people who are smarter than me. So like, I'm always interested in like, how can we do something better? And so like the idea of getting someone on our team who's like, oh, this is how, like that excites the hell out of me. I don't have an overarching like, okay, what do I do, when we get there? Maybe we sell to a REIT. Maybe, we package it all up and sell to some big private equity firm. I don't know, dude. I know that I'm doing what's exciting to me, and that will likely change. And when it does, Matthias and I will be changing with it and kind of going with what makes sense. I think it's more the journey that excites me than like, oh yeah, when I get to top 50, I'm going to sell and I'm going to have all this money. It's like, who gives a shit about that? What difference is my life going to be at all that money versus not? Like, I'll go freaking crazy if someone tells me to sit on a beach for an extended period of time. That's like a day trip at best. I live close to the beach. That's a day trip. So no, I'm not a not active person, but we'll see what everything entails.
Yeah, I can never just sit on a beach and drink a margarita. Like I don't really get much joy from that. Like I get joy from the work, like being productive. That's what really gives you joy. So for anybody out there, get some work. If you're feeling sad, get some work done and you'll feel a lot better. You'll feel a lot more productive and your mood will increase. It's like working out, similar type of benefits I've seen as like productivity, it's crazy.
Totally, dude. Yeah. I like that.
Awesome, man. So we could talk for hours about this. But I want to be respectful for your time, and I want to thank you for coming on the podcast. So for people out there that don't know you, where can they find you? How can they connect with you? And where are you on social media?
Yeah, so, social media, tim.woodbridge on Instagram, Tim Woodbridge and some numbers, I think 54 on Facebook, I forget. So I'm pretty easy to find on socials. I am ramping up the social media stuff I'm doing to really get more presence with the goal of, getting the word out on how amazing mobile home parks are to invest in as a, limited partner. Again, all deals we do, like we look at investor returns first. Nothing else matters in if the investor returns aren't there. So yeah, I mean, we're getting people again 2x equity multiple in 5 years, a ton of depreciation. I don't know if you have worked with Eden and Madison specs yet on cost segs, but we get a ton of tax write-offs. So, looking for those high earner people who just don't have the time to put into real estate but still want the returns. Right now, our website is WC Invest Group, or really WCINV Group, GROUP.com.
That's awesome. Awesome. Love the growth, man. Yeah, I've seen you in a ton of Facebook groups and it seems like you're doing really well. So thanks for coming on and appreciate you having on the podcast. For anybody out there, make sure to like and subscribe and leave a review on Spotify. I'll also post this on YouTube as well. And if you are a private investor out there, you want to park some capital into the mobile home park space, go to rocketcapital.fund, create an account, and I will connect with you and see what I can do to help you achieve your goals. So that is it for episode number 7. Thanks you guys for hopping on. We'll see you in the next one.